today we're here, and Rodrigo's going to talk to us about visas and immigration, so we can get some of the fallacies straightened out.
Well, actually, you could apply here without leaving anywhere. Let me tell you how that works. When you enter to the country, you, under oath, establish on the application form what the objective of your visit is. So you mark tourist, and they give you 180 days. The law establishes that during 180 days, your only activity in Mexico will be as a tourist. What happens if you let that document expire and then it becomes 181? Before 181, you cannot do anything in immigration because your status as a tourist cannot be changed. But the day 181, you are out of a status. In that day, you can apply for temporal residence in the country with an expired visa. It sounds weird because nobody wants to overstay a visa, but that's what you could do. You wait for your visa to get expired, and the day 181, you go to immigration and tell them, my visa expired, I don't want to leave, I want to stay in Mexico, I have no status now, I want you to give me a regular status. And then you start a process called regularization. In that moment, you supply all your documentation that would have shown in any consulate. And the good news is that in Mexico, it doesn't depend anymore on the decision of one single authority. In Mexico, everything is standard in immigration. So you just comply with the checklist, you provide your documentation. If your documentation is in English, it has to be translated, and then you wait for the decision here without leaving the country of becoming temporal or permanent without leaving. Again, you just need to let your visa expire. What I know, it sounds horrible.
It's scary.
It sounds scary, but that's the only option because that's the only way that you get out of tourist status. And they will give you a penalty because it's an administrative issue. The penalty depends on how many days you let your visa expire. But usually an expired visa, it's if you let it expire for 5 or 10 days, it's about $100 or less of a penalty. So you no longer need to leave the country. What you could do is just let the visa expire, and before it expires, gather 6 months of bank statements showing your income. Now, I highly suggest that you open a Mexican bank account and transfer your money from the U.S. account to a Mexican bank account so you don't spend money on translation. Translating 6 months of bank statements can be very expensive. So what you provide is Mexican bank statements, and there are certain banks where you can open a bank account being a tourist.
Really?
Yes, yes. So with your tourist visa, you go to a Mexican bank account, open your account, and start transferring your money into that account. So you present 6 months of bank statements in Spanish to the Mexican authorities, plus the document showing the origin of your income. Is it a pension?
Social Security.
It's Social Security.
And a small pension.
Then 2 documents showing that you are a beneficiary of those pensions, like a letter from Social Security and other sources. You could have a divorce agreement pension, many different pensions there are. So you just prove that you are eligible for receiving those pensions, plus the proof of 6 months of receiving that, and then you're done. You no longer need to leave the country.
Well, person in a specific consulate.
And that's going to become a problem because Mexico is improving the immigration flow systems or immigration flows control. So the law establishes that if you're a tourist, you can only be in the country 180 days for a year. So what we are getting to very close, very soon, is that the second time you renew your visa and you want to return to the country, they will say, sorry, in our system, the last 365 days, you have been out of the country 30 minutes. So I'm sorry, we cannot allow you to return on the same status. Yes, because they are starting to improve the systems. So
yeah.
it's supposed to be 180 days per year.
Right.
So if in a 365 span of time, you have been in the country 364, they won't allow you to return during that year. And then you will have to be asked to leave the country or deny access and wait outside for a year until
Oh
you
my
can.
God.
Because they do
Yes.
ask on the new visa forms, they ask, how long have you been out of the country?
Yes. So we are getting to a moment in which just going to the border, renew the visa, and come back will not be an option.
I don't blame them. That's why they're charging so much now.
And you also need to understand that there is something in international law that is called reciprocity. And because of the aggressions, the real aggressions that immigrants, not only from Mexico, but in general, they are living in countries of like United States, Mexico can apply reciprocity laws. And there are very serious penalties for people overstaying visas in the United States. There are 10-year bars to people to.
Yeah.
Mexico can easily say, you know what, you overstay your visa, and then you cannot return to Mexico for 10 years. That was out of the question in other political moment, no, in which there was more affinity. But right now, anything can happen. So if Mexico is your destination and you know that everything that is said abroad is not truth, that is just a political view from a very small group, we Mexicans understand that this is not the generality. No. And also, consulates receive expressions of solidarity every day. Many people write letters to consulates and describe how embarrassed they are by the policies that some people are implying. So Mexicans, we know this is not, we cannot generalize that feeling, no? However, nations have to apply policies that correspond to certain reactions of national feeling. And the truth is, right now, most Mexicans disagree with the policies that our current government has taken in the lack of response to defend ourselves from these attacks. No? And this is going to become an issue, and it might be, after the elections, a very important point to decide who we want to reach. It's amazing, but the percentage of petitions for people immigrating to Mexico has increased after
Yes.
the. So many people, even in the United States, are not happy by the turn of the events, how things are becoming. Unfortunately, when you are a leader and you don't spread cordiality and harmony, evidently what you are doing is not good for the society. No, you as a leader should always try to promote values, not attack to minorities or to establish a supremacist speech. So many things, even Native Americans, U.S. citizens, are not happy with how things are becoming and how the American society has been divided. No, I have a client here who happens to be a Republican. No, and the poor woman receives so many nasty messages from friends here in Mexico. American fellow friends who know that she's Republican, no? And being Republican doesn't represent being Donald Trump,
Right.
no? So this is affecting even people on their side, no? So clearly, this is not a generalized feeling, and we Mexicans know, and we have a long, long tradition of having stupid politicians, no?
Okay, we won't put that on camera.
Well,
But we do understand that there is a division of legal representation and the rest of the society. So we are not proud of our politicians. We cannot assume other countries are represented by their leaders, no? And we know that because we hang out with expats, especially in Yucatan. We are so used to looking at many activities that expats do, and most of those activities represent kind and people committed to the society. We see a big amount of expat community helping with abandoned dogs or cleaning up the beach or fundraising for so we know, or rescuing our houses, or making the beach communities alive. So we clearly know how important the expat component is in our society, no? And we don't want a politician to screw that up, no? And we understand that. So, but of course, governments are usually different than society, and we need to follow the rules. So, little by little, Mexican systems in terms of immigration are going to become tighter. And even there is a wall or not, getting into the United States is becoming more complicated, more difficult, and more risky, more dangerous. So Mexico is becoming a destination rather than just a transit territory. So we are going to be receiving more immigrants that instead of going north, they are going to stay here. So the Mexican immigration system, it has to start working on systems to have more control of immigration flows. This is obviously not oriented just to detect those gringos who overstay every 6 months and go to Belize. This is oriented to the big flows of Central Americans and Caribbean, African, people from all over the world who are no longer going to be able to cross the border to the US and will find a place to stay. And of course, Mexico is a very welcoming country. We have a very small percentage of foreign community. The foreign community represents only 1%. But Mexico is looking this as a potential threat for receiving flows of people who will need services and etc. So Mexico is going to improve the immigrant flows, and this is going to have an impact to every expat.